Welcome to the HRchat Show, one of the world's most downloaded and shared podcasts designed for HR pros, talent execs, tech enthusiasts, and business leaders. For hundreds more episodes and what's new in the world of work, subscribe to the show, follow us on social media, and visit HRgazette.com.
Welcome to another episode of the HR Chat Show. Hello, listeners. This is your host today, Bill Banham. And I don't know if I've ever shared this with you before, but I am a huge F1 fan, Formula One fan. I took a little bit of a break when Lewis Hamilton was robbed of his deserved 8th title, but I'm back and I'm loving this season. And actually, this season represents 75 years of F1, and to celebrate 75 years of F1 and the iconic Silverstone Grand Prix, Happydance is launching the Careers Site Grand Prix, a bold, buzzy 6-week campaign benchmarking the performance of careers websites around the world. The Happydance team will rank customer career sites in a head-to-head competition against the Fortune 100 careers sites based on speed, on performance, accessibility, best practices, and SEO, and showcase the results in a dynamic F1 style leaderboard, complete with weekly podiums and end-of-season champions. And I'm delighted to say that the HR Gazette is a media partner for this campaign. Joining me back on the podcast after way too long is Bryan Adams, CEO and founder of Happydance Careers Websites. Bryan is also a 2-time best-selling author, a TEDx speaker, and, pun intended, an all-round good sport. Bryan Adams, it's been too long. Welcome back to the HR Chat Show. How are you doing today?
I'm all right. Thanks for having me back, Bill. It's been too long, hasn't it?
It's been several years. I feel like maybe it was a conversation during the early part of the pandemic. I'd have to double check. And of course, listeners, I will add a link to Bryan's previous appearance in the show notes. Bryan, for those people who did not listen to our previous conversation, why don't you start by taking a couple of minutes, telling our listeners all about yourself, all about Happydance, and what gets you up in the morning?
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Bill. Well, I won't take 2 minutes. I'll just try and keep it brief. But for the last 20 years, I've been obsessed with employer brand strategy, and helping organizations tell their story of what makes them different and relevant to talent when it comes to people making great career decisions. In 2020, I released my second book, Give and Get Employer Branding, which has proved fairly popular and sort of created the spark for a number of conversations that I just love to have about employer brand, EVP, employee value proposition. And in the last 18 months, I've pivoted to sell that company of 20 years. So it's a major shift for me from employer brand strategy, but I've retained the tech bit of that organization, which is the career website company called Happydance, which is entirely focused on candidate experience and helping organizations really optimize and showcase their employer brand online so they can find the best talent available to them. And it's been a wild ride. So a lot of change since we last spoke, Bill, but also still in the same ballpark. And I'm still obsessed with the same sort of stuff, employer brand and storytelling and candidate experience.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the HR Chat Podcast. If you enjoy the audio content we produce, you'll love our articles on the HR Gazette. Learn more at HRgazette.com. And now, back to the show.
Yep, so previously Bryan was at PH Creative. I missed you, Bryan, at a conference, I think it was last year. I don't know if it was SHRM or HR Tech or something. I popped by the stand when you were still with those guys to say hello, and I was told I'd missed you by 2 minutes. There we go. There we go. So it's good for catching up today. Now then, what we're talking about today is the fact that Happydance has launched a careers site competition inspired by a sport that I love, and I'm still reeling over Hamilton not winning his 8th title, which he should have done, but that's a different story. Formula One. It's fast, it's high stakes, and it's full of precision. What made F1 the perfect metaphor for the world of candidate experience? And as part of that answer, what message are you hoping to drive home?
Yeah, so I mean, my sort of origin story is all about employer brand and how we make people feel and the messaging and all of the soft stuff around a human connection between an organization and a candidate, which is lovely, and it really does serve as a differentiation factor between us and competitors in the marketplace. But actually, Bill, when it comes down to it, we're a SaaS company and the software needs to work. And at the really sharp end, if this was an e-commerce company, it'd be really important for us to make sure that the technology loaded quickly, the experience on the page was sharp, the information was there, you could buy when you wanted, and all of that good stuff. So actually, this is a campaign to get right down to the nitty-gritty, to the really sharp end of what we really do, and prove that our career websites are the best technology out there in the marketplace, not just our differentiation of the brand and how we position companies and how it looks and how it feels and how it reads. So that's our approach, and that's what we're really trying to get to, Bill.
And also, F1 is sexy and cool. So
well, that doesn't suck as well, right? And it was funny actually. Our MD Jim Taylor, it was his idea, and he's like, "Do you know what? We've got a couple of companies that are attached to F1, and I think Drive to Survive is just like thriving. It's like really sort of captured my attention as well, And he's like, I think there's something in this. There's a really good parallel. What if we did something to compare the speed and precision of F1 with how fast a career website launches and lands and makes a difference on candidate experience? I just thought, wow, this is a brilliant idea. So we ran with it, and it's exciting and fun, and here we are.
Absolutely. I once met Lewis Hamilton's dad, by the way, an absolute gentleman. Just
no way, that's amazing.
I did. And Jake Humphreys lived down the road from me. I met him once too. Very nice man, very tall.
Practically part of McLaren or Ferrari at this point, Bill. That's like brilliant humble brag stuff there.
So, Bryan, this campaign combines storytelling with serious tech analysis, of course. How important is it for TA and employer brand teams to understand both the creative and the technical sides of the digital candidate experience?
That's a really good question, and we sort of take for granted the speed of the technology and the performance of the technology, because ultimately the candidate experience is sort of memorable and differentiated by the messaging and how a brand presents itself. But actually, that all falls away if the technology doesn't perform, And with my origin story and my passion and my expertise and, my 20 years experience in employer branding, it's really easy for me to sometimes gloss over the amazing work of my team, my sort of pit crew, if you like, of engineers who make sure the technology loads quickly, is super optimized, is like the tippy top of performance. It's easy for me to gloss over that stuff, but actually this is a campaign that really celebrates the technical expertise and performance and reminds us just how important like load speed, SEO, accessibility, optimization, all of these things, how they contribute to a great candidate experience.
Okay, well, let's just take one of those aspects for a moment. Load speed, which is something I spoke about with your team prior to this interview today, and how that's a key focus here. What difference does that make in terms of the candidate going to a site and maybe adding their details, or maybe an employer going to a site and looking for candidates? What's the difference? What difference does half a second make to that experience in terms of ultimately finding a job or ultimately finding a candidate?
Yeah, you go to a career website, and the analogy with F1 is phenomenal, actually, the more I think about it, because this is an old study. It's over 10 years old, but it says that for every second past 3 seconds that your career website takes to load, you lose 10% of your audience. Now, just think about that. After 3, 4, 5 seconds, like you can lose half your audience before they've seen anything at all you want to tell them about your company, just by the speed at which it loads. And you're not up against other career websites. You're up against other digital experiences, which include Amazon and Netflix, and TikTok and Instagram, and all of the things that have absolutely diminished the patience we have from the time of clicking a button and expecting an experience on the other end. And, this can be the difference between getting the attention, creating affinity, and driving a candidate to action, or they completely disregard your organization before you've had a chance to say anything at all.
Once in a while, an event series is born that shakes things up, it makes you think differently, and it leaves you inspired. That event is Disrupt HR. The format is 14 speakers, 5 minutes each, and slides rotate every 15 seconds. If you're an HR professional, a CEO, a technologist, or a community leader and you've got something to say about talent, culture, or technology, Disrupt is the place. It's coming soon to a city near you. Learn more at disrupthr.co.
What about some of those other components you mentioned a moment ago? You mentioned SEO, you mentioned accessibility. That's huge, but this is an HR podcast we're on today. Why do those two things matter too?
Well, accessibility correlates directly to diversity, inclusion, all of the different segments of your audience who might be on a desktop, on a mobile, might be on 4G or 5G, or, in a third world country sometimes, you have to accommodate for your entire audience and optimize for all of those conditions to be truly inclusive, to get the best candidates possible. You don't just want to hire the best candidates with the best broadband speed. It's just not unfortunately, it's not that easy. And your organization is designed to present a brand experience to be as inclusive and diverse as possible. And, load speed is just the absolute tippy top of priorities when it comes to engaging with a full audience, wherever they are. And as a brand experience, it's your job to take your brand to your audience, not the other way around. And that is it's becoming more and more important, and the data shows it. More people are applying for roles or experiencing a brand for the first time on a mobile, more and more as the months go by. And, if you want to compete for the best talent, your job is to be there and meet them where they are.
So my understanding is part of this competition, the winner gets a trip to Silverstone to see the British GP, which sounds amazing. I want to enter or find a way to win myself. But the point is, you've opened this challenge up to everyone. It's not just to crown a winner, of course, but to raise the bar across the board, to hopefully improve industry standards. Why was it so important to design the campaign as a learning opportunity, not just as a race?
Well, Bill, we've got nearly 100 customers, and the data that we aggregate across 100 customers who get millions of impressions on a weekly basis, not just a monthly basis, is enormous. Sharing some of those lessons is important for us to raise, a rising tide raises all ships, that kind of thing. But can I be honest, Bill? We're just really bullish, and we're really arrogantly confident that we've got the best tech out there, and we can perform the best, and we welcome open competition. And do you know what? We've had some great entrants already, some other organizations who have got some fantastic career websites, so it's going to cause chaos on the grid and going to really upset my team thinking that this is going to be a breeze. But this is what it's about, if we can have healthy, positive, fun competition, we can share the results, we can learn from it. We're going to raise the industry, we raise our standards, and that's what it's all about.
Fun question for you. It's just occurred to me, but I'm going to ask it because we're using lots of cheesy F1 language in today. So, Bryan, if Happydance was an F1 team, which F1 team would it be and why?
Whoa, what a great question. Oh, Bill, you always throw me these questions. I think, and I've got to be honest here, I am an F1 fan because of Drive to Survive on Netflix. I'm not one of these people who've sort of avidly followed it for years and years and years and years. But, what's captured my heart is the likes of McLaren, who or Williams, who are constantly punching above their weight, constantly relying on ingenuity, creativity, teamwork, new innovation all the time, not just sort of budget and money and to sort of guarantee the win of a race. That spirit exists in Happydance, and it's what keeps a smile on my face. It's what drives the team forward and makes us want to do better tomorrow, better than we did yesterday. So it wouldn't actually be Red Bull or Ferrari or the obvious. I would like to think everybody agreed with me in Happydance that we have the spirit of the underdog, but the ambition of the winner.
You, sir, are a wordsmith. What a good answer. Thank you very much. I personally, I'm a Hamilton man, although he's at Ferrari now, and that's a problem for me because I'm not really. I'm kind of torn there. There is a lad from Norfolk, where I'm from, who is an F1 racer at the moment as well, so I quite like him too. Now that you've highlighted the concept of marginal gains which is a key F1 principle.
Yeah.
We've spoken about the SEO, we've spoken about the accessibility, we've spoken about the site speed issues. These marginal gains, they are essential to winning in talent acquisition, just like they are in F1. What are some of the smallest changes that can have the biggest impact on a careers site performance beyond what you've already mentioned?
Yeah, so to win this competition and to create the marginal gains that make a real difference, we've tried to change it up a little bit so it's not just the obvious aspects of top performance. And when it comes down to it, from a brand experience perspective, the personalization, the detail you can go to personalize an experience, to optimize an experience for a candidate so they feel like they are really talking to the brand and having their questions answered with the insight that makes a difference to their life, not just an insight to the organization. This is the stuff that matters. That doesn't just offer a positive candidate experience, it offers a more relevant candidate experience that takes a person closer to the organization and paints a sort of more realistic picture. So we're trying to delve into that aspect as well. There's tangible things that are easier to measure, which of course are really important. But when it gets down to it, when like the pit crew are looking for those marginal gains, the 10th of a second and all of the aspects that make a world-class performance, we're looking for those aspects of evidence and those elements that really make a difference in a career website that goes into all of those conversations with F1 pit teams. So the analogy, I don't know, is it corny? Is it obvious? But when you look at the performance and how many people contribute to making an F1 team and the degrees of world-class number one on the grid versus a few points for 10th, it's amazing. And the similarities are just so apparent and obvious that we just couldn't resist leaning into it. So, all of those marginal gains go into what we're trying to measure. And if we can highlight, at the end of this is a learning experience as well, Bill. At the end of this, we don't want to just say, here's what we knew was important, so here's what you need to look at. We're hoping that some new things pop up, some things that like really challenge us and challenge the industry and offer some insight and value to say, hey, listen, turns out we need to spend more time thinking about the language we use to answer the questions, not just the specifics of the yes and no's and this, that, and the other. Like, who knows? That's the exciting thing for me, Bill.
Okay, very good. We are doing a fantastic job here of using all of the F1 references. So let's keep up with those racing words. You work. I think you mentioned you work with around about 100 clients at the moment.
Yeah.
I'm guessing they're big and small. With careers site innovation moving fast, there we go. How can organizations keep up, especially those without the resources of a Fortune 100 company?
Well, do you know what? It's not about the resources and the budget of a Fortune 100 company. It's a lot easier to make sure that your career website is optimized and performs than just literally throwing money at it. It's not about that. And a lot of the analogies really do hold true. Making sure you get the basics right, making sure that what you want to improve is measured and managed, not falling into the old sort of conventional pitfalls of just assuming best practice, but actually testing and measuring and using data to drive your agenda forward. When it comes to accessibility, SEO, which now doesn't just include search engines, but like chat GPTs and like different ways we engage with technology and more conversational sort of experiences that we need to optimize for. All of these needs to be tested and measured and driven forward from a data perspective. That's how F1 works, and that's how our industry is driven forward as well.
So the focus of today's conversation up to this point, of course, has been career websites. But depending on the type of job, whether it's an hourly job, contingent worker, a more traditional white collar career, folks also use social media very much for looking for jobs these days. How important is that? And how can career websites make sure that they're maximizing their reach by leveraging LinkedIn, TikTok, Instagram, whatever it might be?
I mean, that's a great question, Bill. And the simple answer is any brand that wants to be relevant to their audience needs to take their brand where their audience is. And it's our job to make sure that we show up, we are relevant, we have the information at hand, the experience is positive, and I could say that for like Netflix, Amazon, Apple, Meta, like any of these organizations, not just on the talent space, but on a brand relevance and a brand experience perspective. That's how we need to be thinking. TikTok's not going away. Instagram's not going away. WhatsApp is not going away. LinkedIn is not going away. We need to optimize for the places where our audience is and make sure we show up, we're differentiated, we're more relevant than our talent competitors, and there's something in there that makes us memorable and stand out, that gets the attention. And, we're in an attention economy. The platform is irrelevant in the eyes of your audience. Our job is to show up consistently wherever our audience is and make that experience as optimal as they get from all of the other branded digital experiences possible, not just talent, but like in general.
Excellent. And before you race off, today, Mr. Adams, one last question for you. How can our listeners connect with you? So maybe that is LinkedIn, maybe that's TikTok, maybe whatever you want to share there. And of course, how can they learn more about Happydance?
Yeah, well, I appreciate the opportunity there, Bill. LinkedIn is great for me. So LinkedIn, type in Bryan Adams, just like the Canadian singer, and Happydance, you will find me. And I'm very, very active on LinkedIn. That's great. Love to connect people there. If you're interested in this campaign specifically, it's gp.happydance.love. You can enter your organization and see how you get on the grid there. It's open to the Fortune 100 organizations, plus any organization who thinks they can challenge. So that's exciting. Or just check out happydance.love generally and get in touch with the team, and we'd be happy to talk to you.
Excellent. And Bryan, I know I said this to you before, and I appreciate that you're based in California, but as you know, I do a whole bunch of HR-related events over here, the Disrupts and things in the UK. I do some in Canada and the US, but mainly in the UK these days, because that's where I'm based. Whenever you are back over here, sir, you have an open invite. I'd love to hang out with you. I'd love to get you on stage. Thank you very much for being my guest today.
My pleasure, Bill, and I will take you up on that. Thanks so much for having me on.
And listeners, as always, until next time, happy working.
Thanks for listening to the HR Chat Show. If you enjoyed this episode, why not subscribe and listen to some of the hundreds of episodes published by HR Gazette? And remember, for what's new in the world of work, subscribe to the show, follow us on social media, and visit hrgazette.com.